Manla, shall we start the program?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, Tesla, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. And before we start today's session, I would like to request everyone and those who are joining afterwards and those who are watching from YouTube, thank you very much for giving us your precious time, and we appreciate it. And from the website, WebEx, the participants, I would like to request if you're comfortable showing your videos on so that it would have a very interactive session with our speaker, Ms. Manla. So I request you, if you're comfortable with, kindly keep your videos on and put your microphone on mute, please. And thank you very much, and welcome to the Introduction of Buddhism series. Thank you very much. And today is the 14th session, and which is on Bodhicitta. So why this program was started, I would like to give you a brief information, is that that it consists of 24 different topics, and the main aim is to the people and those who wants to deepen their understanding on the diverse Buddhist disciplines in order to lay the basic foundation of Nalanda Buddhist Studies. So we based that, and we started this teaching series under the guidance of our director, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdil, Director of Tibet House, New Delhi. And this time we have Miss Manla, and she will be going to speak on Bodhicitta. And before I proceed, I like to introduce Miss Manla. And Dr. Man Buangla is recently completed her Nalanda Master's course Batch 1 from Tibet House, New Delhi. And she has the experience in the fields of higher education, public policy, and media and communications in Singapore and Australia. In recent years, she has been delivering secular mindfulness-based training to organizations and individuals. Thank you, Dr. Manla, for accepting our request, and I'd like to request to kindly proceed the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Domala. Thank you very much to Tibet House and to Venerable Geshe for giving me this opportunity to do a bit of sharing of the Dhamma. So, and thank you to my friends for coming in, and to all the participants. It means a lot to me to see familiar faces and names. And thank you, Pampala. She was at the last talk, and I see her here. So thank you so much. And before we actually start the session, I would just like to invite everyone to just spend a few minutes to settle down and just to place a bit of attention on our breath. And we must all have had a very busy day. Maybe for some it's the start of the day, I'm not sure. But if not, then, just letting go of all the business that we've built up, especially for some of us this afternoon when there was a worldwide outage of WhatsApp. And so that must have caused some anxiety and frustration among some of us. So really trying to just let go, of whatever that we have been doing, thinking, and returning our attention to this room. And spending a few moments just resting our attention on the breath. So simply just observing the breath. And whenever any distraction arises, to just let go of the distraction. Return our attention on the breath. And doing this for a couple of minutes. And so, thank you very much. And as is a good practice for any session, it's good for us to be setting a motivation before we start the session. And here, I'd like to invite you to just read this Refuge and Bodhicitta prayer 3 times. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So this last line in the verse is bodhicitta. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And talking about bodhicitta, I'm just reminded of a recent talk that I went to with one of my teachers that he has given to a bunch of university students from a local university, Buddhist society. And so we shared this prayer for preliminary prayer before the start of the session. And he was explaining a little bit about this prayer. And throughout the talk, the term bodhicitta came up quite a bit. And then slowly, I kind of sensed that, hey, maybe the students there are not really understanding what bodhicitta is. And so when we polled the students, like, how many of you are familiar with this concept, have heard about it? And they were like, okay. And we found that actually not many people are familiar with the term at all. And so it may be because, that they have been more exposed to a Theravadan tradition, or maybe they are quite new to Buddhism and really have joined the Buddhist society in order to try to understand a bit more about Buddhism. But for us, who are quite familiar with the term bodhicitta, because we've been receiving teachings from our teacher, and then just bodhicitta all the time, right? Central. Then we might tend to forget that bodhicitta is not an everyday term, and that it may not even be a familiar term among some Buddhists or among people who are interested in Buddhism. And so really getting a sense of how extremely fortunate we are to have been exposed to bodhicitta. And then, some of you may say, yeah, it's exactly because I'm already been exposed, to teachings from very great teachers about bodhicitta. Why should I be attending this session? And so, of course, this session is intended for people who are relatively new to Buddhism. So if you are, so then I hope you're able to derive some benefits from just going through this session. But if you are already quite familiar with bodhicitta, then I would still think that it might add a bit of value in the sense that if we are still all trying to practice bodhicitta, then it's always good to recall again and again, why it's beneficial to be practicing bodhicitta, how to cultivate it. And as we are all coming in from some slightly different perspectives or have different examples, different experiences, so hopefully we're also able to pick up, a one tip or two, and some ideas to help us to apply in order to overcome some of the challenges that we face in trying to practice bodhicitta. So that's what we try to do. And now, bodhicitta, as some of us may know, really is like right at the core of Mahayana Buddhism. And so it is this wish to become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. And so this is the mind that is the entrance to the Mahayana path. So if anyone is following a Mahayana teacher, going to Mahayana centers, and at the end of the day, we are still more concerned with our own welfare rather than the welfare of others, then we can't call ourselves practitioners or students of Mahayana Buddhism. So it is right at the central. And so bodhicitta comprises two syllables. One, bodhi means awakened or enlightened, and chitta is mind. And so bodhicitta is also translated as an awakening mind, mind of enlightenment, mind generation. And so more formally, it is a primary mind that aspires to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. And if we want a more technical presentation, then it is the wish to attain unsurpassed enlightenment, which is the object of attainment for the benefit of all sentient beings, is intended objective. So bodhicitta is a mind that holds two aspirations: to be awakened to become a Buddha, and then in order to benefit all sentient beings. And so, question is, why bodhicitta? Bodhicitta is a mind that wants to benefit all sentient beings. So why do we want to cultivate bodhicitta? And so then for that, we have to go back to a bit of a more fundamental question to ask ourselves. What do we want from in life? And then, if we think about it and we drill it down, basically, finally, it is about not wanting any suffering, wanting the maximum happiness. And this is a huge topic to investigate that. In short, without bodhicitta, we are not going to get there. And the reason is that our sufferings in life right now, our birth, sickness, aging, death, losing our loved ones, losing our possessions, getting what we don't want, getting what we don't want, and not getting what we want. It's all rooted in a self-grasping ignorance that distorts the reality, that's complemented by a self-centered attitude that sees ourselves as being more important than others. And so the self-grasping ignorance is countered by the wisdom of emptiness, and the self-centered attitude is countered by a mind of bodhicitta. And so, by doing that, by cultivating bodhicitta, we are able to attain our highest aim of attaining maximum happiness and be free from suffering. And bodhicitta has been variously described as the supreme medicine that quells the world's disease. It's the tree that shelters all beings wandering and tired on the path of conditioned existence. It's the dawning moon of the mind that dispels the torment of disturbing conceptions. It is the great sun that finally removes the misty ignorance of the world. So, if these analogies sound a bit too poetic and abstract for you, then just remember that bodhicitta is the most profitable mind to have, because it will bring about benefits in this life, future lives, all the way to Buddhahood. So in this life, what does bodhicitta do? Well, because we have a mind that is more loving towards sentient beings, want to benefit them, we tend to have better relationships, physical health improves, we are calmer when we face problems, we are calmer at deaths, and because we are consciously trying not to harm others, so in future lives we obtain good rebirths. Bodhicitta again also helps us to quell some of our grosser afflictions, the anger, the resentment, the jealousy. So it helps us, to attain liberation from samsara. And bodhicitta is the energy that enables us to cleanse even our subtlest mental defilements in order to achieve the peerless happiness of Buddhahood. And so, of course, liberation from samsara Buddhahood will require the wisdom of emptiness, but bodhicitta gives the energy. So, having this mind of bodhicitta is actually the most profitable thing that we can do. And then you may say, yeah, okay, well and good, it is very, very beneficial, and it's captured, in this verse by Bodhisattva Shatindeva, that those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of their conditioned existence, those who wish all beings to experience a multitude of joys, those who wish to experience much happiness should never forsake the awakening mind. So for ourselves, for others, bodhicitta is the best mind to have. And And then we'll think, yeah, okay, sounds really, really good. And as usual, this big, but will come in. But does having, unconditional love and compassion for everybody mean that I'll be taken advantage of? Why should I be kind to someone who has harmed me? To benefit all sentient beings? Sounds really, really challenging. It's very difficult. Can I do it? And so, nobody says that cultivating bodhicitta is easy. It's beneficial. It's not easy. But we can and we must cultivate bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is a mind that we will only develop if we train in it. So we may have instances where, we may be just energized by some instances of sufferings of some people to really want to help them. But this mind is not very stable, it's not very strong. For bodhicitta, we do have to train in it. And we must train in it because, as we mentioned, this is the mind that will lead us to the peerless happiness, infinite happiness that we all want. And so there are two methods to train the mind in bodhicitta. And one is the sevenfold cause and effect method. And the second one is known as equalizing and exchanging self and others. And for both methods, the principal cause of generating the bodhicitta is great compassion. So great compassion is this mental factor of love that wishes all sentient beings to be free from all suffering and their causes. So it is a very, very vast kind of mind and wish, covering all sentient beings, wanting to relieve them of all kinds of suffering. And for a great compassion to be generated, two elements are required. One is that we must have love for the sentient beings, that feeling of closeness. And then second one is then to be able to see their suffering. Then the wish comes up. May they be free from all suffering and the causes of suffering. And as we mentioned, yes, the mind can be trained. It is a very, very vast motivation, but this kind of vast mind can be trained, but it is over many lifetimes. And the reason why it can be trained is that it is a mental quality. And so unlike physical qualities where there are limitations, and for whatever we want to build on, we may have to start from scratch again. For mental qualities, it is cumulative. So it can be trained and built up and generated over many lifetimes, but it will continue to grow. And so this gives us the confidence that we are able to cultivate great compassion. We are able to finally generate bodhicitta. And so, as we mentioned, this mind of great compassion actually requires two elements. One is love for sentient beings. And if we think about all sentient beings and we think about where we are right now, right, then, at the moment, our love is a bit limited. And the question is, how do we then try to cultivate this sense of love and feeling of closeness that can be expanded to encompass more and more sentient beings? And so here, Venerable Geshe Dorji Damlula has brought in very skillfully the mechanics of psychology to help us to understand better how we can cultivate love for sentient beings. And so just very, very briefly, so our mind actually comprises what is known as the main mind and some functions of the mind that's known as mental factors. And each moment of our mind is actually accompanied by 5 mental factors. And they're variously contact, attention, discrimination, feeling, and intention. And so at this point in time, our mind is very selective. our mind tends to flow to people that we like. We try to sort of reject or push away people that we don't like. And in order to, and if we think about why, our mind moves towards certain people, it is because we recognize them as being very nice to us. So as a kind of source of benefit. So think about the people we like, right? Why our friends? Yeah, because they offer us a friendship. They may be supporting us in our studies, our work, our mothers, our parents, our siblings, right? So our mothers cares for us. So, when we see that people are benefiting us, then our mind tends to flow towards them. And so here, what we want to do is to try to increase our sense of seeing sentient beings as a source of benefits to us. So this is the mental factor of discrimination. So we're trying to cultivate our thinking so that we see sentient beings as being a source of benefit to us. And then when we see that someone is benefiting us, then very naturally, a pleasant feeling arises in us. And then we have this intention of wanting to move towards them, wanting to embrace them. And so really working on the two parts of our mind, the cognitive side, trying to adapt our thinking, adjust our thinking such that we see more and more sentient beings as being the source of our benefits. And then having a pleasant feeling whenever that comes up. And then on the affective side, then wanting to move towards them and embracing them. So this is the mechanics of how to cultivate greater love for sentient beings. And so now we want to go into just looking into a greater detail into each of the method and the steps. And starting with the Sevenfold cause and effect method. So I'll first enumerate all the 7 steps, which is remembering all beings as one's mothers, remembering their kindness, wanting to repay their kindness, seeing all the beings in the light of great affection, generating great compassion, altruism, and bodhicitta. And so this is known as the Sevenfold cause and effect method because the first 6 are causes leading to the final effect, which is the goal that we aspire to, bodhicitta. So sevenfold cause and effect method. And for this method to work, it is really, really important that we actually believe in rebirth, that there is the existence of past and future lives. Because just look at the first step. Remembering all beings as one's mothers. That means we are trying to see every single being as having been our mother. And if we just even look around this room, how many of us are thinking that you have been my mother in a previous life? It is not easy at all. Right? And then to think that an ant has been my mother, a cockroach has been my mother. And so our teachers have said that actually, recognizing that all beings have been our mothers is one of the most difficult realizations to generate. And being able to do so depends very much on our firm conviction that there are past and future lives. And so this is a very, very important ingredient. Then the second thing also is if we look at our mind now, not only do we not see others as having been our mothers, right? At the moment, we are again just being very selective. We are very close to some people that we like. We reject people we don't like. There's a big bunch of people that we are indifferent to. And so if we consider that generating bodhicitta is like building a house, first we have to level the ground. And so a preliminary practice for this method is the practice of equanimity. And so just very, very briefly again, going into maybe a bit of sharing about why rebirth is possible. Again, it's another huge topic. Can't do justice to it. But I think one thing that Venerable Geshe-la has said that really strikes me is that just as it is difficult to prove rebirth, it is as difficult to disprove rebirth. And I think that is very convincing. that allows us to really open our mind. It's like, okay, we don't say that definitely there's rebirth. We don't say that definitely there's no rebirth because it's very difficult to prove. And of course, anecdotally, we do hear of people who are, reincarnation of so and so, and there are stories. But by reasoning, there's also a very famous text by Acharya Dhammakirti, to prove using reasoning the existence of rebirth. And very, very quickly, it's basically just saying that a person comprises a body, which is physical material, and a mind that's intangible, that's not material. And while our body comes from the substances of parents, our mind is not an amalgamation of their mind, right? So, we come with different characters, personalities, and so on. So where does this mind come from? And so the reasoning is saying that this mind must have come from a previous moment of mind. And so where is this previous moment of mind, before we are conceived in this life? It must have been then, associated with a body of a previous life. And so similarly, when we die, this body is no more, and our mind will just continue to travel to take on a body of the next life. So this is kind of briefly, if we can think in this kind of direction, then slowly, maybe then we will come to have a greater and greater conviction that it cannot be anything other than the mind having traveled, having been coming from previous lives, the mind going to the next life. And then it will enable us to then slowly recognize that, okay, just as I have a mother in this life, then if I have many, many previous lives, beginningless, there's no beginning, then I must have had many, many mothers in the previous lives as well. And I'm going to have many, many mothers in the future lives. And then if we're open to that, then it will become a possibility that yes, everybody has been my mother in previous lives. Food for thought. And here, starting with the preliminary of the practice of equanimity. So as we say, at the moment, not only do we not recognize everybody as being our mothers, in fact, we very, very actively classify them as maybe being our friends, enemies. That's the usual term that's used in this practice, but we can say they're difficult people who have harmed us in some ways, who have been nasty to us, and then some people who are just strangers to us. And you notice that our classification is very much related to how they treat me. Yeah, it's my friends because my friend benefited me. My enemy because they're nasty to me. They have harmed me, and then strangers because I have nothing to do with them. And so what we want to do is to start first by trying to reduce this kind of bias attitude. And here it is again through reasoning and thinking through, even in this life. I mean, did you have a friend or maybe even a sibling that you were close to, whom then you had some disagreement with and now are no longer close to, that you may not even like very much? Or someone whom you found to be a bit nasty or difficult, whom you are now quite close to? Or someone that you don't know, who has become a close friend? Or who may have done something nasty to you and who has become your enemy? So we can see that even in this life, our relationship with people are changing. That there is no sort of inherently friendly person there, no inherently difficult person there, no inherently strange and neutral person there. And even within the course of this life, a friend can become an enemy and become a friend again. Changing. And then if we think about having many lives, then we can imagine that over many, many lifetimes, The different beings have been our friends, have been our enemies, have been strangers. And it's just that there's no one with whom we have not had, say, a friendly relationship with. No one with whom who has not harmed us. And so if you're able to again think and think and think more in this way, then I think again slowly, slowly, this tendency to be very excessively biased towards people will be slowly reduced. And then we move on to the first step of this sevenfold cause and effect method, which is remembering all beings as being our mothers. And so here, just a note that most of us actually tend to receive a lot of kindness and care from our mothers, and we do feel a sense of closeness to them. But if for whatever reason that you actually have not been receiving so much closeness and care from your mother when you were young, and it's very difficult to think of your mother as being someone who is very kind to you, then it is okay to be substituting mother. So although we'll mention mother, but it's okay to think of someone who has been a very loving caregiver for you, especially when you were very young and very vulnerable. So, and then so starting with our mother of this life, and then here again, with conviction that there are many lifetimes, then trying to see that all sentient beings have been our mothers. Then the next step, which is really the key to the success of this method, is to try to remember their kindness. And so starting to recall the kindness of our mother in this life. And there are sort of traditionally 4 points that we can reflect on, but we can draw on any instances of great kindness from our mother that we can remember to really, generate or increase the sense that our mother has been very, very kind to us. So generally the 4 points: kindness in giving us this body, protecting us from life's dangers. So when we were really, really small, basically we are just totally dependent on our mother to feed us, to protect us. And then when we grow up, our mother to provide us with all the necessities, the environment for us to be able to study and grow and so on. And that, also that our mother has borne many hardships and even accumulated negative karma just for our growth. And negative karma part, it might be easier if we take a look maybe in the world of animals, that they will have to kill just to get food for their young, some of the animals. And here we are talking about not mothers, not just human mothers, right? Human mothers, mothers in all sorts of states. And so not just human mothers, animal mothers, insect mothers, right? And then the other way of trying to reinforce the sense that our mothers have been very kind to us is really to observe the other mothers. So one of the teachers had taught that whenever we see some mother being really, really kind and caring to their child, then have this thought that, oh, in a previous life, this child might have been me. And it is quite effective because the moment you kind of think that, then I think, again, cognitively, you feel this sense of, oh, okay, this person has been kind. And you feel closer to the person. So not only observing human mothers, observing animal mothers as well, and say, okay, when we were animals, this is how our mother has behaved. And here I would just like to share. So about 1 year ago, our Singapore zoos, giant pandas, which are on loan from China, the female panda actually gave birth to a panda cub. And so, they were featuring, all sorts of photos and videos of how this panda was taking care of her cub. And it was really, really interesting to observe that this is a first-time mother, and she is like this huge giant panda, right? And when the little panda cub was born, he was only 200 grams. And you could see the care, that she exercised, that she will squash him and sit on him. And so it was really, really very, very sweet. And again, if you think that, oh, this is how maybe a mother in a previous life has taken care of me, then, again, just a sense of closeness may come to us. And so I just like to share this little clip, of this little panda and the mom in action. Yeah. That's so very sweet. And so that by doing that, I think that reinforced our ability to really think that our mothers have been very, very kind to us. And then the third step is repaying their kindness. So again, if we recognize that we have been at the end of receiving a lot of kindness from our mother, and that everybody has been our mothers at one point in time, and so everybody has been very kind to us, except that we couldn't quite remember. But if we can truly sense that, then it's quite natural that when people have been very kind to us, that we are very grateful. And if we have the opportunity, we want to repay that kindness. So this is a step that kind of naturally flows from steps 1 and 2. And when we are able to do these 3 steps very well, then we will have a greater sense of friendliness towards the beings that we encounter. And we are able then to see all the beings in the light of great affection. And here I would like to share a little story. So I think a couple of years back, my grandnieces and grandnephews were shown a little animation of this story called The Most Beautiful Woman in the World. And so the story goes that one day a boy went into the village and said, "Oh, can someone please help to find my mother? I've lost her. I couldn't find my mother." And then the villagers were saying, "So, okay, how does your mother look like?" And this little boy says, "My mother is the most beautiful woman in the world." So the villagers kind of just went around looking, and they couldn't find, couldn't find the mother. They brought some lady, and then he said, "No, this is not my mother. This is not my mother." And then so finally, there was this woman that was walking up the road, and the little boy ran to her. "Mom." And the villagers were looking at this woman. Said, okay, seeing someone who is like freckled face, looking quite unkempt hair, looking absolutely ordinary. Saying, okay, so this is why we couldn't find her. And then, so after this video finished, my grandnephew turned to my nephew and said, I think my mother is more beautiful than the woman in this video. And so for all of us, whoever who is an object of our love and affection just appears very beautiful in our eyes. And that's why when we cultivate this sense of seeing everyone as being endearing to us, then the way we look at them will become different. And I really like this phrase that Geshe-la sometimes uses, which is to see all beings as being so special in our eyes. I find this very evocative and something that if I can remember, then I can try to do, which is to really look at people as if they are the most special person in your eyes. And then you find that if you do that, actually then the way the person responds to you is a bit different as well. And so generating this feeling of love, wanting all the beings to be, having happiness and its causes. And then, so when we have this love and affection, then naturally we see them as being very beautiful. We want the best for them. And then we realize that actually all the beings are suffering. And so here we can just think of the sufferings of the sentient beings, maybe with some verses from Lama Tsongkhapa, that they are swept up in the currents of the 4 powerful rivers, tied by the strong bonds of karma, so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the darkness of ignorance, born and reborn in boundless cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the 3 mysteries. Thinking of your mothers in this condition generate the supreme mind of bodhicitta. And so this one also depends on our understanding on what exactly is the nature of what contributes to our suffering, and how our suffering, will have no end. So we will see our dear mothers acting out of ignorance, yeah, and then maybe even engaging in some negative karmas, just to benefit us, or simply just not realizing the reality and clinging on to so much samsaric pleasures. And then knowing that then after, when they pass away, they will be reborn again and again, in cycle through the cyclic existence with no end. And understanding the suffering of the sentient beings actually starts with understanding the suffering state that we are in at this point in time. So without truly understanding that we are suffering, and that the root cause of our suffering is the self-grasping ignorance, the self-centered attitude, then it is very difficult to truly see that other sentient beings are in the same suffering position and wanting to free them from that. So here is really starting with ourselves to contemplate very well these two verses, and in generating for ourselves this wish to be free from the suffering, this sense of renunciation, and then seeing that other sentient beings whom we have cultivated love for are in the same position, then generating this wish to want to help them. So a very nice analogy that I came across is that if your mother is walking towards a precipice and is about to fall, what do? Do you just sit there and enjoy your tea? No way. No way. And so, we will want to rush to help. And so we now have met with the Dharma. We have a better understanding of what we can do in order to free ourselves from suffering, to achieve greater happiness. And so seeing that, our mothers, our very dear mothers, are in this state of ignorance, how can we not try to help them? And so then here, we would want to say, I generate this very, very strong wish. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. Then the next question is, okay, so this is a strong wish. Who is going to do that? And so here, we actually developed this very courageous attitude to say, I will take responsibility that all the beings are free from suffering and the cause of suffering. So it's the same. It's seeing your mother, falling off the precipice. Am I not going to do anything? I will do it. Then, okay, so how am I going to do it? And then we realize that at the moment, we don't even have the capacity to manage our own emotions, let alone try to help other people very skillfully and very effectively. And then we recall that finally, the Buddha does not wash the negativities of beings. He cannot remove his miseries by his hands. His spiritual realization is not transferred to them. So even if we can be relieved of our suffering, we can't then just by our power just remove these negativities from our mother. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. So finally, what we have to do in order to free the beings from the suffering, and to endow them with the greatest happiness, is to enable them to meet with the Dharma, to be able to learn and to practice the Dharma. And then if we are saying, I'll take responsibility to do that, then I'll take the responsibility to, help them and teach them the Dharma. And at this moment, we are just not able to do it because we don't have the qualities. And then, to be able to teach the Dharma to sentient beings effectively, first we have to know the paths and all the practices that will lead to awakening. Secondly, we have to know the different dispositions of the beings so that whatever we teach to them will be the most effective for them. And so then we will realize that only a Buddha will have that perfect qualities to be able to do so, because they have the perfect love, they have the perfect knowledge, and they have perfect power. And so then understanding that, then we make this really, really firm commitment. May I become a Buddha. for the benefit of all dear mother sentient beings. So this is how, in a step-by-step way, we move towards generating this very strong mind of bodhicitta. Okay, so this is the first method. I don't know if anybody wants to come in with any comments or any questions at this point in time. So if not, then I will move on to the second method for cultivating bodhicitta. Sorry, if someone has unmuted to speak. Sorry, I think it's just someone's mic that's been left on. Domala, would you be able to listen?
क्या कर रहे हो खराब हो गया अच्छा मैं कहा ये कर रहा है
Sorry, Domala, are you hearing me? Okay, all right. So, okay, this second method for cultivating bodhicitta is known as the equalizing and exchanging self and others method. And so here there are 9 steps, and let me again just enumerate the steps. One is equalizing self and others. Second, reflecting on the demerits of cherishing oneself. Third, reflecting on the merits of cherishing others. Fourth, the practice of taking the suffering of others with emphasis on compassion. Fifth, the practice of giving your happiness to others with emphasis on loving kindness. So 4 and 5 together is known as the Tonglen practice, or the practice of taking and giving. And the actual exchange of self and others follows. Then 5, 7th point, special recollection of the kindness of others, altruism, then bodhicitta. So the first step here in this method, so this is a method that we actually again get to generating bodhicitta using a series of reasoning. And the first one is equalizing self and others. Basically recognizing that we are all equal in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And that we are all equal in having Buddha nature, this potential to become Buddha. And this method, as opposed to the practice of cultivating just equanimity, which is to try to just reduce our biased attitude towards people that we like and we don't like, this is actually a method that uses reasoning to counteract our tendency to consider ourselves as being more valuable and important than other sentient beings. And so, just as a thought experiment. Right? So, at this moment, there are 7 billion people on this earth, and then we are just one of 7 billion human beings. But how does this I appear in my own mind? I definitely like that we are at the center of the universe. And if you think about it, I mean, what is the reason that I'm at the center of the universe? Why is it that I'm more deserving of happiness than anybody else? And in fact, then if we are going to do an evaluation, then it's very obvious that if we say, we have to apportion happiness between me and everybody else, then others should get this huge share. And so there's really no reason to say that I'm more important than others. And then the question to ask is, but why? Why do we have the tendency to see ourselves as the center of the universe? And it turns out that the answer is not divorced from our self-grasping ignorance. So there's a typo there. That's because we have this ignorance that see our person as being so solidly there, being so independent, then naturally, we create a division between me and everybody else. And our evaluation of everything that happens to us is always in relation to how what they do affect me. And so this is really beautifully encapsulated in one of the verses in Acharya Dhammakirti's Pramanavartika, which is that seeing the self will lead to seeing others. Bifurcating self and others leads to attachment and aversion. Associated with these attachment and aversion, all faults such as killing, fears, and so forth ensue. So it's from there, this sense of identity and others, then seeing, okay, you are benefiting me, you're unkind to me, so I want to push you, I want to embrace you. And then in the course of doing that, we engage in a lot of negative karmas that would then become the cause for our suffering. So this is how it goes. And so then the next step is reflecting on the demerits of cherishing oneself. Really having this sense that it is really not good to have this self-cherishing, to have this self-centered attitude. Because the counter is that we want to develop this mind that cherishes others. Right? So first, we reflect on the demerits of cherishing ourselves. And here, we can make use of, the things that we have come across, the news that we have read. So every day, right, on the news, website, your TV, so we can see news of people killing their parents, right, abusing their domestic helper, scamming people of money. And what motivates them to do it? Can't be unconditional love, right? It's for their own benefit, it's for their self-interest. And so it lands them on the wrong side of the law, right? They go to jail and so on. So we can see, from whatever we come across, that when we act out of, a lot of self-cherishing, it doesn't bring good results. And then I think more importantly is we want to relate it to our own experience. That maybe that because of acting out of self-cherishing, we've ended up bringing problems for ourselves. And yeah, maybe just thinking in terms of, say, illnesses. So sometimes we come down with a major illness. And a lot of times we will say, okay, I have this major illness because of the chemically processed food that I eat, because of the stressful work environment, my boss stressed me out, and so on. And we tend to usually ask, why me? Do we ever ask, why not me? And then, so sometimes it's true that, something can happen and we can't trace the cause immediately to our own self-cherishing. So like in this case of an illness, right? What have I done to deserve this? And it's always being pointed to some external factors. But when we start to ask, why not me? Then we trace it back to say, we link it back. So, and that's why we link it back to a deeper reason, some karmic reasons. So in our past lives, we must have harmed, killed others, and that's why we are experiencing this illness now. And even in this life, I mean, we are not saying we have killed a human being, right? But maybe in this life, we have cooked some live fish just because it's fresh to eat, or killed some animal for food, or who has not stepped on an ant, or a bunch of ants or wiped them out. These are all killing, right? And or maybe in our previous lives, we've been soldiers. And so when we start thinking about karmic effects, then then we can trace and say, okay, so why did we even kill this fish for the freshness, because it's tasty to me. So it's not unconditional love for the fish, right? It must be for my taste, good food. Yeah. So why did I engage in this? It's all because of me. And then if we realize that, and then okay, then we link it to the suffering results, then we can see that acting out of self-cherishing is not going to bring us beneficial results. And so here, it is really, really necessary to be thinking in terms of the operations of karma. And again, for us to have deep conviction on the infallibility of karma. Otherwise, questions will arise. But I didn't do anything bad in this life. Why am I experiencing this, and that? And so Geshe-la again has very skillfully, guided us to think in terms of karmas. And here we can take an example from, say, the practice of the six perfections, and what happens when we don't engage in the practice of the six perfections. So here, these are all these undesirable results that we don't want. Poverty, ill health, lack of radiance, lack of elegance, lack of mental peace, miseries, and samsara. And then when we trace back to what is the cause for these undesirable results, then we find that this is due to having acted in opposite to the six perfections. Stinginess, lack of morality, impatience, laziness, mental distraction, ignorance. And then we think, okay, what is driving all this? Why do we not want to give, some resources to other people? Because then I won't have it. Lack of morality is a lot of harming, it's a lot of non-virtuous actions, basically. Why do I want to harm other people? Because I get some benefits from doing that. Right? Impatience, laziness, so all of them can be traced back to this self-centered attitude. And so seeing that, then really deeply feel that a self-centered attitude is not something that we want to have. And really becoming very angry with that self-centered attitude. So this is how we go about doing this. And another way of thinking, so one is thinking from the perspective of karma. All the undesirable results that I'm experiencing now, if we trace it, it goes back to the self-centered attitude. The other way of thinking is to ask ourselves, so far in this life, we've acted purely out of our self-interest. And if we think that we have many, many lives, for beginningless lives, we have been acting out of our self-interest. And what have we accomplished so far? I mean, are we any happier? Do we have less suffering? So we are still, encountering lots of problems, maybe even more problems than before. And here I recall a quote that's been attributed to Einstein, but I don't think it's really from him, but it's a really, really great quote, which is that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And so far, we've basically just acted based on, our thinking of our own welfare from our self-interested point of view, acting from ignorance. And then we want to become happier. We want to be free from suffering. Not possible. And so having encountered the Buddha's teaching, Buddha has pointed out a different way in which we can become happier, that we can become free from problems. And so even sort of hearing this and understanding that, you will not get a different result from acting in the same way, then why not give this different way a try? But here we also have to distinguish between, a self and a self-centered attitude, which is that the self, ourself right now, the person who's capable of learning and studying and practicing the Dharma, who's capable of becoming a Buddha, is very precious. But it's just the self-centered attitude that sees others as being more important that we want to destroy. So having reflected on this, now we want to reflect on the merits of cherishing others. And one very simple way of thinking that is very effective for me is just that when I cherish others, others are happy. And then it turns out that I'll be happier too, right? But others are happy. And when we think about that, we are in an interdependent society, then, if only I am happy and everybody else is miserable and resentful, I can't be, very happy living in that society either. And then, of course, if we cherish others, we have better relationships as well. And again, being convinced that karma is in operation. And so here again, it is if we practice the six perfections, then what will come about is all the desirable results that we want. And all of this is traces itself to an other cherishing. And so, thinking about the pros and cons, understanding that actually our greatest enemies is our self-centered attitude, self-grasping ignorance. And furthermore, in our ability to really become the most happy being, to attain Buddhahood, actually depends on sentient beings. Because without them, we cannot be practicing virtues. And so this verse here just says, if there's no sentient beings, how can I practice generosity? If it's not independence on them, how can I practice ethical discipline? And this last point is very good. If everybody is already, just holy beings, they don't harm us, how can we practice patience? Okay, so we need, the sentient beings in order for us to practice virtues, which is that eventually allow us to cleanse our mental defilements and attain Buddha. And then now we move on to steps 4 and 5, which is the Tonglen practice. So the practice of taking and giving, not giving and taking. First is the practice of taking the suffering of others with emphasis on compassion. And then the practice of giving your happiness to others with emphasis on loving kindness. And so a few caveats here, that it is best to practice this Tonglen in association with the first 3 steps, that we must truly try to see that, the demerits of self-centered attitude, the merits of cherishing others. Otherwise, if we engage in this kind of practice, it's very easy to experience burnout. And then it can be practiced in conjunction with the breath. And lastly, the idea of this practice is that we want to take on sentient beings' suffering to free them of it, and use what the sentient beings don't want, which is their suffering, to destroy what we don't want, which is our self-centered attitude and self-grasping ignorance. And then giving sentient beings all our happiness in the form of whatever will bring them temporal and ultimate happiness. So, and this is the mechanics of it. Just the first one, practice of taking the suffering of others with emphasis on compassion. So when we take in the in-breath, just imagine breathing in the suffering of sentient beings. And here we can think of 3 kinds of suffering: the suffering of change, the pervasive condition suffering. And we can imagine suffering being taken in the form of, say, very dirty gushing water, or dark clouds, or some can think of snakes, scorpions, anything that's kind of dirty. And here I really like this image. So we take in all this suffering, and what we want to do, right? We say we want to try and destroy our self-centered attitude, self-grasping ignorance. And here Geshe-la has used a very nice analogy. For a long time, we always think that, the self-centered attitude and self-grasping ignorance are our friends. They are there to protect us, right, from harm. And so we can imagine them, really happily, sitting and having tea at the center of our heart. And I like that. And then, suddenly this dirty water just gushed down and catch them unawares and flush them out of our system and sort of into the earth, and they disappear. So I've heard other teachers describe and sort of putting a bomb, just bomb of self-centered attitude, self-grasping ignorance. So, this is how, we take and then actually use this to try and destroy our self-centered attitude, self-grasping ignorance. Because this is not a very easy practice to do. It is a bit counter to what we have been habituated to so far. Can you imagine taking on the suffering of other people? All their pain, all their illnesses. And when we try to do that, we may feel a constriction coming to our heart because it's our self-centered attitude kind of rebelling against that and saying, no, I really don't want that, Yeah. So this is that's why it's an effective method if we can do it to destroy our self-centered attitude. And then the practice of giving your happiness to others with emphasis on loving kindness. So here we can imagine ourselves sending soothing light and nectar to all the sentient beings and giving them every happiness. And so the giving can be in the form of, say, the 4 kinds of generosity. We can think of giving them material resources, giving them love and affection, giving them protection, giving them dharma. So we can imagine ourselves sort of like, sending out lights which are manifest as all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, to be giving the teachings, to be soothing the sentient beings. And in terms of the Dharma, I'm also thinking that it doesn't have to be, formal, like bringing people to the Dharma center, making them read Dharma books. Right? Even in the course of our conversation with friends, just trying to bring in a bit of the Dharma without saying it is the Dharma, just encouraging them to engage in virtue, encourage them to refrain from engaging in non-virtues, generosity of the Dharma. Or the giving can take the form of giving our body, our possessions, and our virtues. And it can be directed to specific individuals, to specific groups. It can be given to sentient beings of the 6 realms of samsara. And so both the taking and giving, right, with respect to specific individuals, groups, sentient beings of the 6 realms. And this Tonglen practice actually has its source in the Precious Garland by Arya Nagarjuna. And specifically this verse, may their ill deeds fructify for me and all my virtues fructify for them. And so these verses, I've heard His Holiness mention also before, that it will be good to be reflecting on them. I'm not very sure, I think on a daily basis. Yeah. It's very, very beautiful. And so recently, I was actually guided through this practice by a teacher. And then we were sort of guided to give our body, as thinking our body. Can you imagine giving your body? So manifesting many, many of our bodies and giving it as wish-fulfilling jewels to all the sentient beings. Again, not so easy. And then to give away, all our possessions. And then we were taken through sentient beings of all the different realms. To give it to all the hell beings, to all the hungry ghosts, to the animals, to the human beings, demigods, to the gods. And then all our virtues, and it was like give all your good karma to all the sentient beings. And I mean I could sort of feel a little bit of tinge, right? All the good karma that I've spent so much time accumulating, giving to everybody. Yeah. But very beautiful. So we can do it in a more condensed way. Yeah, we can do it depending on time in a more elaborate way. And then, as I mentioned, because this is something that we are really, really not used to, it can be quite fearful initially. And so really to try to do it at our own pace, do it at a level that we are comfortable with. And so the suggestion is, if we feel that, it is really too much to start taking on the suffering of everybody, just start with taking on the suffering of our own future self and giving all the merits to our own future self. Then slowly extending it to the loved ones and then to others. And then, of course, not forgetting that cultivation of the first 3 steps is very, very important again. Really having this sense that self-centered attitude is something that I don't want. And then we go on to this actual exchange of self and others, which is where previously we consider ourselves as being more important. Now we consider others as being most important. So this is the idea or the mind that says, I'll cherish others more than myself. And this is really like a complete turnaround of how we are used to thinking right now. And again, here when we say we are cherishing others more than myself, also not to say, oh, from now on I'll just neglect my personal well-being, but just to recognize that I'm not more important than everybody else, that I do have to take care of my body and health in order to be able to practice. Right? And I'm one of the 7 billion human beings. So just a caveat there. And then two qualms can come in when we talk about exchanging our self for others. So okay, it's very nice, but you and I are different. How can I feel your pain? How can you experience my happiness? And the second one is, well, if you're suffering, it doesn't really affect me. And so here, the response is really, really beautiful. And this practice also brings in a bit of our understanding on emptiness. Because if we understand that I am actually a construct, a mental construct that's based on my aggregates, that there is no sort of inherently existent, solid, independent person there who is different from other people, then we can start thinking of imputing a larger self on the basis of the aggregates of all the beings, such that, we have one big self, there's one humanity. Yes, so this is a very, very beautiful presentation from Bodhisattva Shantideva. And he's saying that if we have a thorn in our foot, our hand will automatically reach out to pull the thorn out. Yeah? Even though the hand is not feeling the pain. And so when the matter of seeing ourselves as just this solid, independent person is a matter of habituation through beginningless lifetimes. So if equally we can habituate ourselves to see that we are part of just one big humanity, then automatically with any parts of our body is suffering, we'll reach out to help. So very beautiful way of thinking. And so really recognizing that whatever joy there is in this world all comes from desiring others to be happy. Whatever suffering there is in this world comes from desiring myself to be happy. And so His Holiness has often said, if we want to be selfish, be wisely selfish. And when we think about it, the reason why we think that, it is really strange for me to be helping people who have harmed us and, wanting to retaliate when someone is harming us, is really because of our very, very short-term perspective. That, again, it comes back to not recognizing, that there are many, many lives, rebirth, not recognizing that the workings of karmas is infallible, but over many lifetimes. And so what we can see is really just what is immediately before us. What is going to be beneficial for me today, over the next year or next month. And so, masters have described, our ordinary beings as being childish. I think it's for this reason, that we basically cannot see beyond, what is very immediate. And everything is just a very immediate reaction, immediate gratification. And so far, we have been using some reasonings to really try to diminish our sense of self-importance of being, the center of the universe. And here is adding the step to again try to cultivate closeness. That's this feeling of closeness to all sentient beings. So here the way to cultivate is not by recalling that they have been our mothers in the previous lives, but recalling their kindness in different ways. This finally, the mind of bodhicitta has to be unconditional, not leaving any single sentient being behind. And so how can we see people who are very difficult to us right now? As somebody that we want to extend kindness, our bodhicitta, our loving, our unconditional love to. Maybe strangers a bit easier, right? And so here, we are actually being guided to see how these different groups of people can be our source of benefits. And so again, sort of going back to the psychology of cultivating closeness with others, if we see them as being beneficial for us, then our mind flows to them. Near and dear ones, not so much issue, right? Neutral persons, actually also not so much of an issue. And here we are guided to think that why neutral persons are kind to us or bring us a lot of benefits is that without, everybody who is here, all the modern conveniences that we are experiencing will not be available to us. And so, thinking that it is only because there's a lot of users, there's a lot of demand, that there are the vaccines for us, there's public transport and so on. And so thinking in that way, then, understanding that neutral persons are very, very important for our well-being as well. For the difficult people, that is really, really challenging. And here, how they benefit us really is in terms of helping us to identify our self-centered attitude and self-grasping ignorance that is preventing us from achieving the total fearlessness and the infinite happiness that we want. Because the moment someone shouts at you or criticizes you, then immediately this self-centered attitude comes up. How dare you shout at me? You engage in negative virtues, right? That will then cause you to experience, even more shouting in future lifetimes. This is the operations of karma. Now, we don't practice patience. But if we do, if we see that, the long-term implication is that if someone shouts at us and we are able to practice a bit of patience, instead of engaging in that, seeing that as an exhaustion of our negative karma, seeing that this person is giving me an opportunity to be practicing patience, to be reducing my self-centered attitude, my enemy that I don't want, then that person becomes, very valuable to me. And so really starting to see how difficult people can become a source of benefit to us. And the benefit is immense because they are helping us to be eradicating our self-centered attitude, in order to be able to attain Buddhahood. And so as the more we can see that, then I think the more, we will feel that, okay, this is actually a source of benefit for me. And that's why the past masters have actually described these difficult people as wanting to see them as being precious treasures for us. It's our near and dear ones are not going to annoy us, right? Neutral people also know it's the difficult people who really help us to identify all the self-centered attitude and to allow us to have this opportunity to try to eradicate it. And so this special recollection is special in two ways, because it's really special in terms of, again, being counter to our usual way of thinking, and special in the sense that if we can recognize that difficult people can be the source of our greatest benefits, then the sense of gratitude or joy or love towards them will also become very special, that we will really see them as being precious treasure. And then after that, again, implicitly in this step, again seeing the sufferings of all sentient beings, then generating great compassion, this altruistic resolve, to want to take responsibility for eradicating their suffering and the cause of suffering, and then wanting to become a Buddha in order to be able to do so. So this is the steps that are involved in the equalizing and exchanging self and others. And so, just coming to the summary, bodhicitta, really in short, is just this wish. May I become a Buddha for the benefit of all dear mother sentient beings. And here, really asking ourselves, is this what I want? Really thinking through and deciding for ourselves that it is very beneficial to cultivate bodhicitta. So, asking ourselves, where am I at right now? Where do I want to go? How do I get there? And then understanding that, okay, you know, I have a very strong aspiration to develop bodhicitta. It must be trained. So there are two methods to do it, which are easy to understand, but difficult to realize. So two methods. So unlike like the cultivation of the wisdom of emptiness, just said to be difficult to understand, but kind of once you understand, may not be so difficult to realize. Bodhicitta is the other way around. The steps are okay. We can understand what's involved. We can understand the reasoning. Very difficult to realize. But we have to take steps. If we don't take any steps, we'll never get there. And so, but also be aware of where we are and try to proceed at a comfortable pace. And train through repeated meditation. So consistency, making it a daily practice. So I think Geshe-la has recommended that we may want to sort of alternate between the two methods, but not just focus on one. And then intensity, when we're doing the practice, try to bring in a good focus. And then also outside of the meditation. So maybe within the meditation, we do generate some feeling, oh, I really have to benefit others. Then, outside of it, we forget. And so really applying constant vigilance and application outside of the meditation sessions by firstly reframing from harming others and then try to benefit them as much as we can. Draw inspiration from role models. And I think here, it is not difficult to find. In our teachers, we're just finding great examples of role models who are really tireless at trying to teach us the Dhamma and also modeling, in terms of the compassion, in terms of the wisdom, in terms of their charitable projects. So draw inspiration from the role models. And of course, we can draw inspiration from the biography of the Buddha, in the stories of the great Bodhisattvas. And then it is also very important to complement this practice with other practices to purify our negativities and accumulate merit. And sometimes we may have some blockages along the way. And really, if we continue with these other practices to purify negativities and accumulate merit, then it does affect other practices as well and may make them easier. And for us to may make it easier for us to generate some realizations. And then also to have to strengthen our conviction in rebirth in karma and the strength of our renunciation, which is the ground for bodhicitta, and then to engage in developing the wisdom of emptiness. So in other words, many things for us to do, all intertwined, but without doing it, we are not going to get what we aspire to have, which is the greatest of happiness and freedom from suffering. Okay, so this is the presentation. And now just inviting some questions from the floor. I see that it is really not that much time to 10, but just inviting some questions from the floor. If any comments. So no one has any comments. Oh, okay, okay, Marilla.
Oh, thank you, Manla. Absolutely stupendous. So I just wanted to ask you that how have you found the role of emptiness as you have reflected on bodhicitta? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, as I see this, I think we have been sort of taught by our teacher that if we cultivate the wisdom of emptiness alongside the cultivation of bodhicitta, or the cultivation of compassion, then it does sort of reinforce our sense and depth of the compassion that we feel for the sentient beings. And so I would think that it is complementary. And in the light of the method on equalizing and exchanging self and others, then really bringing in an understanding of emptiness is actually very useful for us to try to reduce our sense of this very solidly existent I. Does that kind of
Thank you.
oh, thank you so much, Camarilla. You posed a very difficult question. Yeah. So, anyone? Oh, yeah. Yes. Pentala. Yeah.
Hi, Tishley. Thank you so much, Ms. Wong. As usual, I was very exciting for your speech this morning. Yeah, every time I take your class, it's pushed me so hard to realize and work on myself. Because as what I mentioned before, that I can see as a lay person, we both are lay person, we all are. So I can put easily myself to see how far you're going. So thank you for being a moral for us, first thing. And then other thing, which I really like it, when you mention seeing all the beings so special in your eyes. I think it's a really beautiful phrases. I've been, when people compliment me doing something for the community, and then I always use this word, and I said, because they said, oh, you are amazing, you are great, like as usual. Then I said, I think it's because of your eyes, which you really like me. So that's why you are, kind of encouraging me. So that's really changed for them. I see that and I apply that in my life. And the other thing is, I really like this so far, but like you said, not neglect yourself, because we all learning right now. This platform is for the goodness, do good every time. Say make good karma, do good, and it's all about other people, right? So we seems like going to one direction, but when you make us realize that how important for ourselves to analyze or exchange self method. So that's also a really good thing to remind me that I I'm the one who have to change. I'm the one who have to work on myself to um, to give a happiness for the other people. And thank you for reminding all this thing. And the last thing, I really like your presentation. It's just mind blowing. I was thinking while you were doing this, it will be really good for our next generation, because people like me in the middle age, I really like that, because it's really a clear concept and it's just strike my mind. It will be really helpful for our kids next, like books, cartoons, because Bodhicitta, whenever we talk to the people, Bodhicitta, they all imagine a monk and nun. That's all they said. But when you present like this, it's like you drag us inside that. Okay, this is while we are practicing, but same time we enjoying it. So I really appreciate Ms. Wong, and I really want to see you in future. So yeah, I admire you, and we all are pray for your health and everything. So yeah, thank you so much for giving time. Thank you for the Tibet House for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pentala. Yeah, I think you're putting into practice of seeing me being very special in your eyes. Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think really, in preparing for this session, I see myself as the greatest beneficiary of doing this, because it's like I have gone through for myself a huge analytical meditation. And I hopefully, if some of the sharing has benefited you as well, then that's really, really great. So thank you so much, Pampala. Yeah. So any one else? Jatila?
I also want to say similar things that Panpala already said. Very grateful for this presentation. I have this doubt about the sevenfold cause and effect, the preliminary step that we have. I do remember that Geshe-la had mentioned, why is this a preliminary step and not included in the sevenfold cause and effect? and that perhaps is a step which is in common with the practices of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. But yes, but I still wonder why. I mean, why is it a preliminary step? Is it that the Shravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas, they also do the other 7 steps? I mean, why? I still am not able to really understand why it is still a preliminary step, even if it is in common with the practice of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas.
Yeah, so I think I have heard this same as well, that because it's a practice that's in common with the Shravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas, that it is put as a preliminary step. Because I think if we think about the final goal of practicing this, then it is to generate bodhicitta and to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So I think in terms of the goal-wise, it will be different from what the Shravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas are striving for. And then because they will be seeking more for a personal liberation and nirvana, then in that process they are practicing the immeasurable equanimity. And so this is also something that they go through, to practice. But for them, it will not sort of become this great compassion that wants to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. I'm not very sure whether that kind of addresses a bit of what you have in mind.
I don't know either. Maybe I'll have to think
Yeah.
about it a little more.
Yes.
Yeah, but
So,
yeah.
yeah, because when I thought about it, I was just also thinking that because it's common, and that's why it's not being incorporated into the actual practice, actual body of the practice. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, hi, Andre.
Hi, Mon. Yeah, no, just wanted to say thank you. I think a lot of one of my key takeaway here is that a lot of the quotes, actually I have seen it in Geshe-la's teaching, but I think you very beautifully put them all together. And then I could see, oh, this is where this puzzle fits and all that. So before I'm like, okay, I've encountered this quote, but where do I put it and all that? And I think it's very nice that you put them all together very concisely and all that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andre. No, those are absolutely beautiful quotes. And I can see why our teachers always sort of pull out the quotes, and it's very impactful just to have them in 4 lines and then really think about them. Yeah, and be inspired. Yeah, thank you so much, Andre. So I see that we are past the hour. So Tomala, would you? So if I would like, if I can, then I would just like to share, what kind of questions that I have kind of posed to you that you can just take away and maybe have a think about it. And also to end the session with a dedication. So let me just go back to the slides. Yeah. So really is to have a think for ourselves, which is the steps. So the steps are actually in sequence, and we can see how sort of one leads to another. And so if, with some of the initial steps, we are not able to actually strengthen and have a great feel for it, very, very difficult to get to the end point in a very convincing way. But also, and also then here is about changing our mindset, right? Practicing something that's not intuitive to us. And really then to observe if there's any change, if we are benefiting from it. So of course, if we feel some positive benefits, then that will encourage us to practice more. And then again, coming back to this question, if it comes up in your mind, why should I benefit someone who has harmed me? Does practicing unconditional love and compassion make me a doormat? So can have a think about that. But as we are running out of time, then really thank you so much, everybody, for coming in for this session. And so, and especially since we are talking about bodhicitta, so let us just really collect and dedicate all the merits that we have gathered from attending the session and doing a bit of sharing to our highest ideal of bodhicitta. And I would like to just invite you to end with this dedication prayer. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that bond have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you very much, everybody.
So much. Thank you, Tenzrumala. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Manla, for sharing your very knowledgeable. It must have helped so many participants and also who are joining live from YouTube, and also that somebody has confessed that how much it benefited to themselves, and I also personally felt the same. And Dr. La, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. And last but not the least, the next session, which will be on 8th of November, which is on 5 path. So we'll see you on that, on the introduction of Buddhism. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Manla. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. So have a good day, have a good night. Cheers. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.